What's up, everybody? I'm starting a new series on my YouTube channel where I'll go over my favorite shots I've taken over the last month. Each month I will be selecting my top 6 photos and I'll give some insight into the thought process and setup that went into these photos. I hope you enjoy this series and make sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. I have some ideas for other video series as well, so make sure to stay tuned for that. I'm starting off the March recap with my Spider-Man and His Amazing Friend shot that I did. I was really happy when the Marvel Legends Starfire figure was announced last year at PulseCon. To be honest, I had never really watched the original cartoon, but I'm always happy to complete a team with my Legends. I did go back and start to watch the show before I got the figure, and I really did enjoy it. It had some very funny comedic scenes and interpretations of Marvel characters, so I really did enjoy that. For this shot, I wanted to go with a simple group shot of Firestar, Spider-Man, and Iceman that could have aspects from both the show and pull inspiration from comic books as well. When I was setting this up, I started with just a white poster board backdrop and the 3 figures. For lighting, I used 2 LED desk lamps pointed at the backdrop, a Lume Cube panel mini to light the figures from behind, and a ring light to light the figures from the front. When I took a few test shots with this original setup, I thought things looked a little bland. I swapped out the white backdrop with my blue sky with clouds backdrop instead, and I really liked that better. After the backdrop change, I still felt like something was missing, so I decided to look through my cutouts to see if anything would work with this shot. I decided to go with the Cue the Action scene cutout since it fit well with this specific setup. To get the cutout to be placed in the frame, I used an ACBA flight stand and some sticky tack, and then shifted the placement around through the viewfinder until I got the placement I was looking for. I'm definitely going to revisit some more Spider-Man and His Amazing Friend shots in the future, and hopefully recreate some of the more iconic and comedic scenes from the cartoon. Like I said, there's just some very funny and interesting interpretations of some Marvel characters, so it just lends itself well, sir, for some fun shots in the future. The next shot I'm picking for March is my Cyborg SpiderMan shot. Cyborg SpiderMan was one of those figures that I was really excited for because it definitely gave me the nostalgic feels from the 90s, since I had the old 5-inch version of this figure from the Spider-Man animated series line. Unfortunately, this was one of those instances that happens far too often, where I got this figure, but it just sat in the package for longer than I anticipated since I didn't get around to taking a photo with him for a while. For this shot, I really wanted to go for something straight out of the comics. I didn't really want to do the iconic cover of Spider-Man number 21 with Spidey and Deathlock on the cover, since it's kind of been done over and over again, so I went for one of the panels inside the issue instead. This also gave me the opportunity to use my spider sense effect from Can of Beams, which I had not used before. For this setup, I went with my warehouse diorama and put Spidey on the table that came with the Diamond Select Gotham Edward Nygma figure. I used some props in the setup as well to give the overall scene more of a lab type feel to it. For the spider sense effect, I just used some sticky tack and stuck it to the back of Spidey's head. In the comic panel, Spidey had a sheet over him, so I used a tissue to recreate that, and it worked out perfectly. I also threw in a small pillow that came with a 1/12 scale bed that I have. Lighting was fairly simple on this setup. Most of the time when I use this warehouse diorama, I usually use my white poster board backdrop and point my LED desk lamps at the backdrop to illuminate the windows on the dio. This usually gives some really nice fill light in the scene and just lights things really well. To light Spider-Man, I used my ring light on a small tripod from above and a Lume Cube panel mini from the side to help give a little bit more glow on the spider sense effect. I'm really happy with the way this shot turned out overall. It's always fun to recreate a specific panel from a comic, but I always like to put my own spin on it as well. This shot was a lot of fun for me. I love trying to get a real life and cinematic look on some of my shots to break up the comic book vibe from some of my other shots. I don't collect any MCU figures, but I knew when the Deadpool movie figures were announced I had to buy them. I've done other shots with this Deadpool, but when I saw Justin's Customs was selling some mini Pokemon Happy Meal props, I immediately knew I had this shot in mind. This was also a nice Universes Collide type shot as well, since Ryan Reynolds plays both Deadpool and voices Pikachu. For this shot, I was going for a typical Deadpool being Deadpool type scene, with him buying a Happy Meal and being excited to get Pokemon cards as a toy. And come on, who wouldn't be happy to get Pokemon cards in a Happy Meal? I also went with my custom unmasked head sculpt from the Beltram Bros for this shot to give it that authentic casual look. For the setting, I went with my apartment diorama that I got from Sage JDG and put Deadpool on a couch that I got with another diorama from Sage. I think the coffee table is from Michael's, but you can find something similar at any place that sells miniature props like this. Finally, I added a bookshelf in the background and a laptop on the couch just to add some more details to the scene. When it comes to lighting, I love the results I get when I use my two apartment dioramas from Sage. For this specific shot, I used two Lume Cube panel minis and placed them both at an angle pointing inward behind each window. This helped create some natural looking light coming from outside the apartment. Sometimes when I use this diorama, I can get away with just using the lights behind the windows by upping the ISO and adjusting the f-stop, but for this shot, I wasn't getting the results I was looking for. So to create more fill light, I took one of my LED desk lamps and pointed it at the wall of the room where I take my photos. And the paint on the wall is kind of like a nice semi-gloss finish, so I'm able to get some nice reflected light when I shine different types of light on it. I love doing things on the funny side like this sometimes, and I'm sure this Deadpool will be popping up in a lot of my future shots. And on that note, we need more Deadpool movie figures. Like, come on, Hasbro, make it happen. Like, we need Colossus and just so many other of those great characters from the movie. So I'm hoping we see those sometime soon. I'm not gonna lie, I love everything about the House of X and Powers of 10 X-Men comics that came out in 2019. With that said, I was more than happy when Hasbro announced that they were doing a whole X-Men wave dedicated to these comics. After getting this wave in hand, I was pretty happy with how all of the figures turned out for the most part. Except for Marvel Girl. We're definitely not going to talk about Marvel Girl. I ended up taking a shot with every figure from this wave, and one of my favorites was this shot with Professor X. I know a lot of people have said that this figure was kind of basic, but to me, he pretty much looks and feels like he was drawn in the comics. I had seen a variant cover of one of the House of X issues that had Charles holding a Krakoa plant, and I wanted to create a shot based on that. The reference art I was looking at for this shot had Charles with bare hands, so I used the two open hands that came with Shang-Chi, and they worked perfectly on this figure. I placed the Krakoa plant that came with the figure that will not be named on the same lab table that I used in the Cyborg SpiderMan shot from earlier, and posed Charles to make it look like he was staring down at the plant on the table. Setting up the lighting was definitely my favorite part of this shot. I wanted to go for a scenario where Charles was communicating telepathically with some different color waves behind him. To do this, I used a piece of crumbled aluminum foil and used my two Lume cubes with red and blue color gels on them on either side up pointing at the foil. This created a nice purple pinkish wavy background behind him after the colors kind of blended together. To light the foreground, I placed my two LED lamps on either side of the setup and pointed the lights facing downward and not directly on Charles. I did this so the light would be more of a fill light and not cause any hot spots on the shiny black paint on Charles' body. I had done a similar shot with a colored background using Mysterio a few months ago, so it was nice to be able to use this technique again. It's always fun to try things from around the house when you're doing ACBA because you never know what is and isn't going to work. It's all a game of trial and errors and just trying to find as many different props and lighting solutions you can find. So my next shot is this shot that I did here with Omega Sentinel and Nimrod. This was one of those shots where I didn't really have anything planned beforehand for this shot and wasn't even really planning on doing a shot altogether, but I was posing around the Omega Sentinel, and I remember a panel in the comics. I think it was the first issue of House of X with Nimrod and Omega Sentinel having a conversation in a kind of like futuristic setting. And I decided I wanted to try to recreate that panel from the comic. The panel was a little bit different than what I have set up here. It had Nimrod sitting in a chair, but obviously I don't have any thing that was fitting for a chair like that, so I kind of changed it up a little bit and just had like Nimrod standing in the background having a conversation with Omega Sentinel. When I first set this up, I originally had it just with a single color backdrop. I can't remember if I used a white backdrop or a black one, but I was originally going to go for just a single solid color backdrop. But again, it didn't really seem right for me. So what I did was I grabbed my Palisades Pigs in Space playset, which if you can find that, I would highly recommend picking that up. It's gotten a little pricey on the secondary market, but the set itself and the accessories that it comes with is just it's definitely worth it. So if you can find that, definitely pick it up. So I ended up using that in the background, and when I originally had it in the back, it was a little bit too low, and so it didn't really look right. So I kind of placed some boxes underneath it to raise it up a little bit. And then even after I did that, the top corners, when I just had the white backdrop behind it, just were sticking out a little bit too much. So I ended up going with the purple starry background that I have, and that kind of gave it a little bit of a better look, because with the background blurred out like this, it kind of just looks like gray walls, and you can't even really tell that it's like purplish background, or even it could like go for that, like that's like a window up at the top that's just kind of like looking out at the sky. So I thought that ended up working out a lot better. As far as lighting for this one, it was pretty straightforward. I just had some lights that were pointing at the backdrop on either side to kind of like light it up and wash it out a little bit. And then just used my standard ring light above the figures to kind of give that overhead light to illuminate the figures themselves. Yeah, this was another fun shot to set up, and like I've said previously, it's always fun trying to recreate like some specific scenes from the comics, and again, like putting my little own spin on it with this one in particular, not having all the different pieces that were actually in the panel to recreate it 100%. But yeah, I'm really happy with this one, and the colors are nice and vibrant and very comic feeling. So yeah, it turned out great for me. So for my last shot this month, I'm picking my shot of Kevin Malone from The Office, where he's dropping his chili on the floor. So this is a pretty iconic and hilarious scene from The Office that most Office fans remember and rank towards the top of some of the funniest moments. And I had seen these Fat Mojo Lego style figures from The Office at Target a few times. Every time I saw them, I usually would just pass just because I thought they were a little bit too expensive for what they were. But recently I found them all on clearance at Target, and I picked up the Dunder Mifflin Office set, as well as Kevin and Pam, since the Office set already came with Dwight, Jim, and Michael. So it gave me a few different character options to be able to work with for a few different shots. So I ended up taking this shot as well as another Office inspired shot with these figures, and both of these were the first time I had ever worked with anything in like Lego style. So it was a little bit different and a little bit of a change for me, but it was fun at the same time. And surprisingly, with these being like Lego style figures, obviously there's not a lot of articulation in these figures, but I was pretty happy with how I was able to pose Kevin here in the pretty much appropriate pose from when he dropped his chili on the floor. So yeah, it ended up working out great. And then one of the other downsides about this actual Dunder Mifflin display is, since it's kind of like Lego style, the back side of the office is just kind of wide open. So to kind of help with that, I had like a small piece of like brownish colored cardboard that I kind of just placed up against the back, and it kind of gives it that like natural looking office feel. So that ended up working out great. Lighting and setup was pretty simple on this one. With it being, like I said, like Lego style, everything just kind of like pegs into the ground. So that worked with posing the figure. And then I ended up just using my two LED desk lamps from above to just kind of light the entire scene. And it gave me that nice office looking lighting that I was looking for. And so yeah, this was fun and different. I definitely look forward to doing more things in this scale. I don't think I'll end up getting into like any type of like Legos or anything like that, but yeah, I'm sure I'll be creating more scenes from the office. And with these figures going on clearance, I doubt we'll see more of them come in the future, but I would like to see more additions to this Dunder Mifflin office sets if we can get like the break room, or even it would be great to get like Toby's area so I could recreate some of the classic scenes with Toby and Michael. And obviously having the meeting room would be great too, because so many classic scenes happened in that meeting room. So who knows, maybe we will see more of these in the future, and I'd definitely be curious to pick up a few more if we do get some more. All right, so that's going to do it for the first episode of my monthly ACBA highlight video series that I'm working on. I hope you've enjoyed this video and getting a sense of some of the ideas that went into the shots that I took, and getting a look at what some of my favorite photos were that I took for this month. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this video, and if there's any photos that I took this month that were your favorites, just let me know, and let me know what you liked about those. And yeah, like I said, this is going to be an ongoing monthly series that I'm going to be working on. So make sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the future videos. Thanks.